showing the fight and for being here to learn. And one of the great things about these conferences is the ability to obviously meet and network with other conservatives, but also have the opportunity to sort of learn about sort of future issues, trends, and be able to articulate those when you go back to your home state, whether you're running for office or just being an activist within the conservative movement. I'm really honored to be joined by these three women up here who are really have much more expertise in the area of family leave than I do. But it's an issue that I've gotten more and more steeped in as time goes on. And let me give you a little bit of a background, because you might say, Rick Santorum, paid family leave, conservatives, paid family leave, this doesn't make any sense. Let me start by flexing my conservative bona fides on this issue. I voted against the Family Medical Leave Act back in the 1990s. And so that was an unpaid leave bill. I thought it was a potential burden to business, and particularly smaller businesses, and felt that this is not something that the federal government should be mandating. To say you go from voting against an unpaid family leave to standing up and giving a talk in favor of a paid family leave policy. How does that happen? And I think most of you who follow my political career, I don't have a political career of having changed my position much over time. I don't morph. I don't, evolve. And so, as a lot of our leaders tend to do. So how is it that I can stand up and say I'm very proud to have voted against the Family Medical Leave Act, but I think we as conservatives need to be supporting a paid Family Leave Act? Well, it comes back to really two things. Number one, in the 1990s, I was a persistent agitator within the conservative movement to do something about health care. And that meant that we needed to do something other than just say, let the free market work, but actually try to take care of some of the concerns that the American public had when it came to health care, because these concerns were mounting and they were building political momentum. They fizzled in the 1990s because Bill and Hillary sort of mishandled Hillary care, but the reality was the angst was still there among the public to do something to deal with the uninsured, to deal with the lack of coverage and access to health care. We, as conservatives, basically said, we're not interested in putting up any conservative ideas on how to handle that. I did, others did, but they never were able to get any kind of critical mass, and so what happened? The angst continued to build, and finally the Democrats get control, and what happens? We get a disaster that has roiled our insurance markets, that have created real hardship for a lot of people, and dramatically increased the size and scope of government. Now, let's look at, before I move fast forward to where we are on the Family Leave Act, I want to look back at one other thing. I wrote 2 books in the last couple of years, 10 years. One, a book called It Takes a Family, where I talked about the importance of the American family. If conservatism was going to survive, then the family unit was the key to maintaining any hope of a smaller government and smaller tax base and a successful society without big government intrusion. And I made the case that the Republican Party and the conservative movement had to focus more on strengthening families, because what's happened over the last, at the time, 30 years, 40 years, was that the government was systematically destroying the American family, making fathers unnecessary, undermining the traditional family in every possible way. And that if this continued, we'd reach a critical point where family destruction would be permanent, and that we would be relying upon a big government system which would require more and more services to replace the services that the natural family provides. I wrote a second book called Blue Collar Conservative just a couple of years ago after the 2012 election, in my understanding that the Republican Party has changed. The Republican Party and the conservative movement is no longer the suburban, wealthy country club folks. They're all Democrats today. There might be a few handful of Republicans left, but suburban America is no longer conservative and Republican America. It's moderate to liberal Democratic America. Major corporations in America, which 50 years ago were solidly Republican, and the traditional businesses of the world, well, we've now been replaced with a new economy, and all the CEOs are liberals and Democrats. And the people who are getting wealthy are all liberals and Democrats. So you say, well, who's the base of the Republican Party? Well, the base of the Republican Party is no longer the base it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. The base of the Republican Party, or the people as I look out across here, are working men and women in this country, and folks who believe in capitalism, free markets, and entrepreneurship. That's the base of our party. And of the two, the larger are working men and women who see the Republican Party as have a set of values and principles that they share. They believe in freedom. They believe in strong economy. They believe in strong families, and they believe in life. But they don't necessarily believe in the laissez-faire government that goes with traditional conservatism. They want the government to be not just helping them with, well, not just, they don't want the government to be helping them the way the Democrats use government. But they do want the government to do something to counteract those policies and to promote the values that they believe in. And so that's where we are today. So we can either, as conservatives, if I want to take the first reason I'm involved in this, sit by, do nothing, propose nothing, and let the Democrats pass a big government-mandated business and everybody else and all of you, big tax increase, and provide a cradle-to-grave care for everybody and cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, it's not going to happen this year, it won't happen next year, but if we continue to do nothing and propose nothing, it will happen eventually. And you can say, oh, no, we've got to repeal and replace it. Good luck. Name one entitlement that's ever been repealed. Some have been replaced. We did a good job back in the 1990s on welfare. We replaced aid to families with dependent children. We replaced a very harmful and corrosive system of government aid. But we replaced it and we didn't cut any money. Because once you put an entitlement in place and people are getting a stream of money, good luck trying to undo it. So remember, it's not just, well, I'm concerned about the government involvement in this. Eventually the government's going to get involved. The question is, can we do it in a way that promotes the values that we support? And that actually work? And that actually doesn't provide more government entanglement in people's lives? Doesn't require more government involvement in businesses and mandates? And that's why I'm here. Because I think we have ideas and an approach that actually can do that. And we need, as conservatives, to understand, number one, what the problem is, understand what the consequence to society of this problem, and then we understand what are some solutions that we can put forward that can meet these needs in a way that doesn't compromise the values that we believe in fact, promote the values we believe in. And I believe that the solutions, and I want to give a lot of credit to, in the Senate, Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Mike Lee, because those are the two, along now with Joni Ernst and Chuck Grassley and who else?
Cassidy.
And Bill Cassidy now have joined ranks. But really Lee and Rubio were the folks that were out there on the front lines even before the last election, pushing forth some ideas which I think are really, really good ideas and deserving of your understanding first and support second, I think, once you understand them. And in the House, Ann Wagner. Anybody else I need to recognize on the House? Because I want to give shout-outs to people who do good things.
John Packo of New York has been at the table and has a couple good ideas.
So we have folks who have been out there talking about this, but as you probably see, this is not an issue that has gotten a huge amount of play in the conservative space. And I would say that when it does, and we put some things out there as Patriot Voices, we put some stuff out there, and we get all the folks on the right sort of hammering us, another big government program, and they don't even know what we're talking about. And I understand viscerally how people can react and say this is a concern to me, but I'm really excited that you're here, and we have folks who are experts up here who can sort of answer all of the questions you have. I'm just going to briefly talk about the problem, and then talk about what the consequences of this problem are, and then just very briefly a solution. And then really all of us are just going to take your questions. So be prepared, ask whatever you need to ask, any concerns you have from whatever perspective you're dealing with. We want to hear from them. And we got really smart people other than me up here to answer your questions. So the problem. I think we all recognize the problem. I mean, the problem is that the family is breaking down and has broken down. And we have communities in America where we have single-parent families that when a child comes, another child comes into, or a first child comes into that family, it is very, very difficult to provide for child care and to support that. And why is that important? And go beyond that. And we have, obviously, over the last 50 years, a lot more two-parent families who are earning income, both earning income. And so, in fact, it's the majority of families now are two-parent families earning both earning income. So the impact of having a child is not what it was when there was only one earner in the family. It was easier to have children because there was someone naturally at home to take care of the child. Well, now that's not the case anymore. And so as a result of that, what are we seeing? The impact of the societal change is our birth rates are now below replacement rate and diving in the last few years. We see the consequence of that is it's very hard to grow a country and to maintain a standard of living with a declining population. You know, one of the reasons that we see many in the business community and others pushing for immigration is to replace the birth rate problem that we have here in America. Well, one of the reasons I believe we have the birth rate problem is because it is so difficult and expensive for people to have children today. And it's very difficult for them to find time because parents want to be good parents. You don't want to have children if you're interested in having children. You want to be able to care for your child and make sure that they're given the proper support and upbringing that they need. And if you're a parent, some of you are out there, you know the research, how critical it is for a mother and a father to bond with that child. There's a whole raft of evidence, social science research now out there that talks about how devastating it is if a child is born and doesn't have a parent at home for the first several months of life to bond with that parent. The physical, psychological, emotional, long-term, not short-term, but long-term consequences of that child and its ability to acclimate and to do well in society are profound. So we're not just talking about, well, it would be nice, to have the little bit. We're talking about long-term, substantial consequences if a child doesn't bond with that mother or father and feel the security and stability of that bond. So we as conservatives who care about this can't just sit back and say, well, let the private sector worry about that. The private sector, in a sense, does do that. A lot of companies do provide paid family leave and paternity leave. But to who? Primarily people who are the upper income in society. And the reality is the rest, they have unpaid family medical leave under the law, but they can't afford to take it. They don't have the resources to be able to take time off without being paid. And so the people who are most affected are middle and lower income Americans who don't work for the companies that provide the paid leave and don't have access to it. And there's the ones who, again, those, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, are increasingly our voters. These are our people. And if you want to talk to them, if you want to take the Trump coalition and you want to continue that coalition, we better have answers. It's one of the reasons I think that President Trump did so well among that group, because he showed that by talking about their concerns, things about their life, that he understood them better than previous Republican nominees for president, who all they wanted to talk about was how fast they could grow the economy. There's a chapter in my book that I'm very proud of. It's called "A Rising Tide Lifts All Boats, Unless Your Boat Has a Hole in It." And we have millions and millions of Americans, because of their education, lack of education and training, and maybe addiction or other types of emotional or mental or physical problems, have holes in their boats. And the reality is, when Republicans go and talk about, we're going to raise the tide, and everything's going to go up. When you have a hole in your boat and the tide is low, you're not as nervous. But when you see all the other boats going up and you're in deeper and deeper water and your boat's sinking, that's a scary thing. We have to understand who we are as a party. We have to understand that there are ways in which we can address this issue that are consistent with the values we believe in, and addressing the needs of people who are looking to us to stand by the values we say we believe in, which is families and children and life. And so, Senator Rubio and Senator Lee have both proposed ideas, which I think are really brilliant, because it doesn't propose a big tax, it doesn't propose a big federal mandate, it doesn't impose anything on the business community. It basically is very, in its simplest form, and we can get into more details because I've talked already way too long. It's a very simple idea of taking your Social Security benefit and forwarding it to the time when you need it, which is a mother or father taking a time from their Social Security, a payment from Social Security at the time they have children for several months, and delaying their retirement the commensurate amount of time, the same amount of money, whatever, 30, 40, 50 years from now when they would be taking, or 20 years from now when they'd be taking Social Security benefits. So it's all within the individual's control. There's no mandate on business. There's no tax increase to the general public. It's simply you having benefits from an existing program and taking those benefits when they can most meet the needs of your family. Particularly given the fact that for women in particular, whose average life expectancy is 85 or something like that today, delaying retirement at age 67 a few months is not a big deal. And it isn't for most men either. And by the way, 85 is life expectancy, but that includes all the childhood mortality. If you look at someone who's age 35, their life expectancy is, close to 90. So the reality is, this is a very conservative idea that uses the existing systems that we have to provide real individual choice for people who are in need of help. With that, I'm going to stop, and everybody's been introduced here. If anybody has any questions or comments we want to make, we'd be happy to address those issues and comments.